Says other non-cladding related costs need to be included in his announcement. Giles Grover, who lives in a flat with dangerous cladding, and he says the measures don't go far enough.
Cladding is a start, but the problem is that, as many politicians have said, you can't make buildings half safe. So you can focus on cladding and say, OK, we'll pay, as we are doing for my building, paying for half of it. We've still paid about been asked to pay about £6,000 or £7,000, and we don't know when the project is going to end. So it's a good start, but we're not there yet.
The Foreign Secretary says she's prepared to override unilaterally parts of the post-Brexit agreement on Northern Ireland if negotiations fail. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph newspaper, Liz Truss warns she's willing to trigger Article 16, which would suspend parts of the treaty designed to prevent a hard border with the Republic. She's meeting with her EU counterpart next week for face-to-face talks. Bristol's mayor says symbolic acts should not replace real systemic change, even though he's glad the statue of the slave trader Edward Colston is no longer up in the city. The UK's first black mayor was speaking after 4 protesters who toppled the monument were cleared of criminal damage. A group of MPs claims the verdict was patently absurd and is calling on the Attorney-General to refer the case to the Court of Appeal. The biggest ever space telescope mirror has now moved into place and could soon explore the depths of the universe.
We have a fully deployed JWST observatory.
All right.
There you go. Engineers from NASA and the European Space Agency celebrated as its 18 hexagonal mirror segments straightened out into their full shape. The James Webb Space Telescope, as it's known, was launched by rocket on Christmas Day. NASA scientist Jane Rigby says it'll take a while to decipher the first images it sends home.
I like to think of it as it's like we have 18 mirrors that are right now little prima donnas all doing their own thing, singing their own tune in whatever key they're in, and we have to make them work like a chorus. And that is a methodical, laborious process. We want to make sure that the first images that the world sees, that humanity sees from this telescope, do justice to this $10 billion telescope and are not those, hey, look, a star.
Here, the Duchess of Cambridge has released 3 portraits to mark turning 40 years old today. Kate Middleton poses in 3 different Alexander McQueen dresses and earrings that belong to Princess Diana for fashion photographer Paolo Roversi. The photos were taken at Kew Gardens in November last year and will enter the permanent collection of the National Portrait Gallery. That's your news update. I'm back in half an hour with more. See you then.
If you've just joined me, it's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV and on digital radio. But first, it was the boy or girl exhibit at the Science Museum which came under fire for not including transgenderism. And now it's the turn of their Who Am I gallery, covering human biology and a genetics cabinet display. But how on earth can a scientific, evidence-based exhibition covering the facts of human migration and evolution come under fire, I hear you ask? Well, I'm sure you can guess. They want to update its apparently non-inclusive narrative. Does that even make sense? Now, listen carefully. The display tells the story of how mankind, so that is, by its very definition, about everybody's human journey, which began in Africa, by the way, because, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but we are all basically descendants from Africans. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. And it shows, with visual representations like maps, figurines, boats, etc., how we as a species evolved and how we migrated and colonised the world. I only wish that the history of mankind was actually a proper subject and they taught it at school. If we taught the children this instead of pretty much starting history at the bit about the slave trade, we'd potentially eradicate racism. Now, apparently, one of the objects under scrutiny is a hula girl used to depict Polynesian people. And this has been criticised for stereotyping, even though hula is a Polynesian dance form which is accompanied by a chant or a song, and was developed in the Hawaiian Islands by the Polynesians who originally settled there. Now, the dance dramatises words in a visual form and is actually quite complicated. I wonder if any Polynesians were actually complained about this particular exhibit. I'd imagine they're actually quite proud to have created this dance form. In my view, the museum are confusing something that is traditional with stereotyping. Surely it's OK to use this to depict Polynesians who originally created it. Surely this represents something that is traditional to them and is not an insult. Is it? It'll be interesting to see what they put in its place in any case. Maya Forrester, an executive director of campaign group Sex Matters, criticised the museum, saying it is concerning that a place dedicated to science is being swayed by cultural trends in this way. Now, whilst I absolutely agree that when new knowledge comes to light, things should be updated, but are we at risk of not only airbrushing history, but also now airbrushing science? Right, so before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Each Sunday at 5 o'clock, I'm joined by a celebrity or a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. I talk highs, lows, and the lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. Now, I don't know if you've been watching it, but The Apprentice, it's back on our TV screens and it was absolutely hilarious, I've got to admit. So today, I'll be meeting a man.
Mate, what blokes want to drive a bike with red wheels? Mate, they just smashed it up. They had one thing I told them to do, they've ignored me completely, like I'm a muppet, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong and I just got the over nothing. That's what I'm hoping happened.
Yes, former star of the show, Tom Skinner, an entrepreneur and owner of Bosch Beds. Now, the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to ditch lateral flow testing? There's reports that the government could scrap free tests for people unless they are in high-risk settings, but the Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi has insisted that's absolutely not the case. But is it time to move on and scrap them altogether? And the Foreign Secretary says any invasion of Ukraine by Russia would be a massive strategic mistake. Liz Truss told MPs that since a move would come at a severe cost to Moscow, I'll be discussing with co-founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, Alan Mendoza, his views. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or why not tweet me @gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome again to my panel, broadcaster Danny Kelly and actor and writer Yanis Morgan. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Happy New Year. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
I know it feels like it was miles away, but it wasn't.
Fabulous. Any New Year's resolutions? Maybe to be kinder to one of your more portly panellists?
No, just to continue being the best. That's about it. Well, have you got one? Like, stop eating?
There you go. Yanis, my first visit with my new friend over here.
Careful, he'll eat you and sit on me, crikey. Oh, no, Yanis, what about you? How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, very well. You know, I go away for a few weeks. Suddenly, it all changes. You've got GB News Radio.
I know, it's
That's
great,
cool.
isn't
So
it?
listening.
Brilliant.
It is fabulous.
I've been listening to it driving down
That's the same
from the
thing,
Midlands, yeah.
Well, you've got a bit of a journey.
Yeah, 93 miles takes me an hour and a half. Since I got binned by the BBC on radio, I used to do local radio. Okay. I'm back on radio. Unbelievable!
There you go.
I'm back on radio, yeah!
Well, you keep working, maybe you'll get your own show.
He needs his own show.
I know, it's fabulous. So, Danny, I'm going to start with you then. So, what do you make of this? The Science Museum, which is a factual-based exhibition. They've got an exhibition here, and it's all about the origins of mankind.
Yeah.
And they're kind of looking at this and saying, oh, that could potentially be, it doesn't include everybody, or, I mean, it does seem a bit of a contradiction in terms.
I think there's a clue here with the name of the building, a science museum. So science is something that is scientific and evidence-based and factual. Museum is old, so it's artifacts, something old. So you have something old and something factual, and they are censoring it, and it's worrying. You know, I genuinely believe the next thing that people will want to censor is the Old Testament where Adam met Eve in the Garden of Eden, because that is not inclusive. They were males. Sorry, he was a male and she was a female. OK? So by the Science Museum's logic, that would be censored. And who are they censoring it for? On behalf of whom? 2% of the population?
Well,
Less than that?
Well, they've beaten you to it, as you mentioned, the Adam and Eve, because they actually had a display, which was the girl-boy exhibition, and that's actually they're actually redoing it because people complained that it didn't include transgenderism.
God,
so,
it's
yes,
crazy.
We've discussed that, yes, and I don't know whether there's some chromosome for transgenderism. I don't believe I've ever heard of it, but Yanis, what do you make of this?
It's an interesting one. You raise a good point. I actually have you guys done DNA tests?
No, I haven't.
No.
It's really interesting. So I've actually done it. My wife and I, we did it a few years ago, and it gives you your ancestry. So my ancestry dates back to sub-Saharan Africa, Sudanese. You know, you're saying...
You're Sudanese, are you?
Sudanese, yeah, 0.7%, but it shows you can trace back your line. So I totally agree with what you're saying. Science, it has to be scientific-led. But just to play devil's advocate here, we can't condemn them for trying to move with the times as well, because obviously there will be pushes for all companies to try and keep updated and reflect the science of the moment too.
It doesn't sound like science.
Science at the moment doesn't mean that it's accurate. Science goes back thousands of years to Adam and Eve, if you like. I know it's all biblical and everything, but you can't. That's like saying my version of the truth or my truth. I mean, it's either true or it's not true. Or is the science at the moment that supersedes science?
But is it going to constantly evolve? Like back in the day, smoking was acceptable. Now it's not acceptable. So it's just the changes in views.
Yeah, but smoking is a thing. Smoking isn't sort of scientifically... I mean, yes, we've now scientifically proven that smoking is bad, but smoking was a trend, a craze, a thing that people did. It wasn't a scientific fact, right? So that's what I'm saying. The Polynesians, this dance, the hula dance, is a fact. It's something they did. It wasn't a trend that changes.
I would not be offended if they had Zorba the Greek playing there.
But you're not Greek, you're from Sudan.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So you're a Greek heritage.
Yeah.
And so if they had Zorba the Greek playing, you wouldn't be offended. Now, I'm so glad you said that, because how many Polynesians did the British Science Museum actually ask to see if they would be offended by Hula the Dancing Girl? You see, this is the problem.
Strong, Danny.
You have these people who decide it's offensive on behalf of a tiny minority, and they don't even ask the tiny minority.
Well, I mean, I can say as a voucher as a black person, that's constantly happening. A lot of people constantly taking offence on my behalf. For example, the statue, I wasn't offended at all.
We talked about this.
We could have left that there. That would have been fine to put a plaque on it or put it in a museum. I'm more offended that people pull it down in that manner. I feel, to me, is an offensive behaviour. So where does my thoughts come into this? It doesn't seem to be...
I agree with both of you. When you talk about the science, I totally agree with you. I'm just saying, are we saying that we cannot evolve? You've got an exhibit, and that's it. It's locked in. We can't change it. All they're trying to do is maybe update it to reflect more visitors who are coming in, visitors...
I agree with that aspect. Yeah, of course, as I said in the monologue, it's good that things evolve. If new science comes on board, then we evolve the definitions and we evolve it.
But this isn't new science.
This isn't new science.
It's not new science.
It's just an old...
You have female chromosomes, you have male chromosomes. There is no breaking news here with science. This is the problem,
There is. Transgenderism.
Yeah, but that's not science.
Exactly. I don't think it is.
It's a view.
It's a view.
It's a feeling. It's an emotion. It's an opinion.
Some people would say that they believe they're scientifically transgender. But
based on what, though?
Well, listen, I'm just saying that some may feel that they are, but yet the science doesn't say it, and the science should be king when it comes to things like biology, I would have thought.
Science Museum, can I just say, I agree with you both. I was just playing devil's advocate.
Of course.
Well, what do you actually think, then, if you don't play devil's advocate in your mind?
Well, I do agree with your thoughts. If you look at it from a science point of view, then both your arguments stand up. So I do agree with you, and it's hard to argue against.
It's interesting, isn't it, that the museum are sort of dealing with things in this manner. Because I have every respect for the museum. I love the idea of him. You look like that guy out of Zoolander. You know, not Zoolander, well, it's the same guy.
But not at the museum.
Yeah.
Ben Stiller, thank you.
He doesn't look like Ben Stiller.
You could have gone with Tom Cruise,
but
I get
Ben
Stiller.
The Tom Cruise thing, I guess.
Well, he looks like Ben Stiller.
I prefer Danny's answer.
Yeah. So Yanis, got a sort of Ben Stiller Zoolander look about him. And I think you could actually play him in some sort of movie. But I love that movie, The Night at the Museum, where the things all came to life.
Any Hollywood leading male you think I may look like?
Die Hard, maybe Die Hard 6?
When I was younger and slimmer, I used to look like Andre Agassi. Now, I don't know whether you get that.
Brilliant.
I'd love to see a picture of that.
Next week.
That's a good one.
Well, the spokesperson from the museum said the How Did I Get Here display in the Who Am I gallery is covered whilst curators review content that is more than a decade old relating to migration, race and genetics. which no longer reflects current scientific thinking. We are planning to update the Who Am I gallery on a rolling basis where resource allows to reflect areas where there have been fresh research or a shift in scientific understanding. Well, that makes perfect sense. I think I'd go with that as long as, you know, they don't sort of start doing, you know, because the hula thing to me is not that science-based. I'd be very interested to see where they go with that.
I think when you monologue, you hit the nail on the head. It's that differentiation between just offence and tradition. And hula, it's a traditional dance.
It does seem to be the way, and the Polynesians did invent it. If you just join me, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV and on digital radio. Still to come, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. There's reports that the government could scrap free lateral flow tests for people unless they are in high-risk settings. So I'm asking, is it time to ditch lateral flow testing? Get involved, send us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell us your thoughts, or you can also tweet me at GBNews. And currently there is a poll up asking that very question, so cast your vote. But first, let's get another weather update.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead then to this evening's weather, and the UK looking rather drier with showers easing and clear spells, although rain arrives in the southwest. Let's take a look at the detail then. The southwest of England already cloudy with hill fog edging eastwards. Outbreaks of rain already across much of Devon and Cornwall. In contrast, drier and clearer across the southeast. Winds will be easing, which will allow temperatures to fall away. It's going to be much drier for South Wales, but cloud already thickening from the southwest with some hill fog and light rain possible. And much clearer skies across the Midlands, where it's going to be mostly dry. The odd shower possible there, especially towards the north, but remaining mostly dry. Temperatures falling away under clear skies. And those showers easing over the northeast of England this evening, with increasing amounts of clear skies developing. Those clearing skies easing, winds allowing temperatures to quickly fall away after sunset. And a similar picture too for Scotland. Clear skies again developing as those showers ease into the evening, turning colder under the skies, especially in the east. So although it's a dry end to the day for Northern Ireland, high cloud will already be edging eastwards through the evening, helping to keep those temperatures a little milder. And looking ahead to tomorrow, cloud and hill fog gradually edging eastwards overnight, with patchy outbreaks of rain and drizzle affecting many western areas. And that's how the weather's shaping up overnight into tomorrow and for tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
If you just tuned in, where have you been? I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV and on digital radio. And it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to ditch lateral flow testing? Now, some of the papers today are reporting that the government could scrap free tests for people unless they are in high-risk group settings like care homes. But the Education Secretary, Nadine Zahawi, says that's absolutely not the case. But are they a useful tool, or should we scrap them altogether? Right, so soon we'll hear what your thoughts are. Keep your thoughts coming. But let's ask the panel then, because it's an interesting thing. What do you think? Lateral flow tests, should they go?
I think they're really, really important. Just very, very quickly as well. You see this story in the news, and all of a sudden I was in Tesco's, and there were a big sign this morning saying, we don't have any lateral flows, come back tomorrow. It's a bit like petrol at the pumps now. This story leaks and suddenly everyone's trying to get them.
Well, listen, soon we'll hear what my panel think completely. But first, let's speak to some experts. I'm joined by independent statistician. I could never say that. Darn it. I thought I was going to get it this time. Jamie Jenkins. Jamie, so do you think it's time to ditch lateral flow testing?
Hi, Nana. Yeah, well, I think ditching them completely, obviously not, because they are a kind of a tool in the armoury in terms of managing the kind of our way through the pandemic that we've seen in the past. You know, it was only several months back, actually, the Americans thought they weren't good enough. But, you know, I've seen many people who are doing the lateral flow test. They then go on to get a PCR test, and the PCR test comes positive. But I think what we've got to really look at, where are we in this pandemic? So at the moment, the number of patients kind of in critical care in England is actually lower than what it was pre-pandemic. It was massively higher last January, but at the moment it's slightly lower. So, you know, we know Omicron's the dominant variant in the UK. The positive thing with Omicron now is it's starting to kind of kill off the previous variants, which were more deadly. So as we go forward now in the pandemic, there's going to become that point where, you know, we cannot continue to test indefinitely forever. The main purpose of all the testing, obviously, was to stop people kind of mixing and ending up with people who are going to be more vulnerable. We've got the vast majority of the population now have had kind of booster vaccines who are in the most vulnerable category. So, you know, I think there comes that point that in the future, we can't continue to test from now until the end of 2030. So I think rationalising them, because, you know, there's conflicting reports on how much they've cost. I've heard they could cost up to £8 per kind of test. Significant amounts of money go on these tests. And remember, we've got this massive NHS backlog. And if you're going to look to where you're going to put the money, maybe it's better to start thinking about rationing the tests for people who really need them, rather than just people doing them every single day.
Because it does seem to me that why would you want to test to stop something that would overtake a variant that is a real problem, when with this one, I think it's, 1 in 50 cases lead to hospitalisation, in fact, less than that. So using statistics, 1 in 50, and actually they're saying less, so what's that? That's just like maybe 1% potentially. So, no, but it's less than that. So it'd be like, you know, so somewhere between 1 and 2% end in hospitalisation. Even then, we've got lots of different medicines and everything else like that. Yet on the other side, we've got a situation where there's 37,000 people who are from the NHS who are taking time off to isolate because of the whole isolation period. If you look at the numbers, are we doing the right thing here?
Well, I think the NHS gets criticised and I publish the stats on my Twitter profile, and they get criticised when we see the numbers of patients catching COVID in hospital. And we know that's kind of an area in latest stats about 1 in 5 in England in the latest week. All the numbers been added of caught in hospital. So maybe testing kind of the healthcare workers. We have got about 40,000 healthcare workers off at the moment who are either self-isolating or off because of sickness linked to COVID. It's starting to drop off in London now, which is a positive. So we might be coming over the back end of that. So in care homes, in hospital settings, maybe, we want to try and reduce the fact. Imagine years ago, now we would have seen that people who were carrying flu but weren't seriously ill with flu may have been passing that on in hospital as well. So, but we're learning as we go through the pandemic. So I think these daily tests for students and school children who are having them, with a less deadly variant, we've got to come to a point, I think, where we understand that people are going to have it. The good news is this is more like the cold, the symptoms. Some people are saying you can't distinguish between Omicron and the common cold. That's obviously a great thing if that means that the less deadly variants are killed off. And, when people catch it, they'll pick up some immunity from it as well. So we can't keep vaccinating and boosting everybody every 3 months. Even the head of the JCVI has come out and said that. So I think, maybe a bit premature this month as we're going through the winter to kind of axe lateral flow test free ones over the next few weeks. But I'd like to think by the summer we would have gone from there.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Jamie, thank you so much for your thoughts. Jamie Jenkins is an independent statistician. Right, let's now bring in Professor Asim Majid. Don't laugh at me, Danny. He's a professor of primary care and public health at Imperial College London. So welcome, Professor. Now, are lateral flow tests worthwhile?
I think they are worthwhile. They have a key role to play in the pandemic. But I think, like any other healthcare, we need to look at the spending on these very carefully and use them to maximum effect. So I think we need to look at how we prioritise access to the test, who gets them, and often we test so that we do use the money that's spent on these tests wisely and don't waste any funds that can be spent elsewhere in the NHS.
It's interesting because I was reading that they're saying that lateral flow tests may be less effective for detecting the Omicron variant, even when they're at their most infectious point. So, but yet obviously the PCR tests are much better. So it'll take it at least 3 or so days before it will detect it, and that's when you're most infectious. So it does, to me, just seems, well, we know that Omicron is unlikely to kill you. The lateral flow tests don't appear to be that sensitive, and by the time it's detected it, you've already spread this thing on. So what's the point?
So the UK HSA data does show that the test that we've approved in the UK will pick up Omicron as well as other variants of the coronavirus. So it will detect most people who've got infection. And the idea is because you test early in the course of the illness, whereas a PCR result might take a few days to come back, you can then isolate yourself if you're positive and protect people you might be in contact with. So I would say they have a role, I think, but I think we need to be careful about how we use them.
Because then if it gives you a false negative where you don't think you have it, so then you carry on with your business and actually you do have it and you're spreading it, then it just seems to me that, well, what's the point? Especially as it doesn't seem to be as deadly. Omicron is not as deadly. This is what we've realised.
So they can give a false negative result, that's true. So if you have symptoms, you should always get a PCR test as a first step rather than relying on a lateral flow test. But the fact is, Omicron, although on average it's not as serious as Delta, which we faced before, it can still cause serious illness. So we're seeing admissions rates rising across the UK. We're seeing deaths from COVID-19 rise as well. So because those people have been infected with Omicron, we are seeing an increase in the impact of this on our health, either via hospitals or via death. So it is having an impact on us across the country.
But how much different is it, say, from the flu, which we deal with all the time? Because now it feels like, I mean, I don't know, and I know we have to, in a sense, be careful that we don't sort of move too fast. But because it is, as we've looked at it, and obviously South Africa are also confirming it because they're slightly confused at how we're locking everything down. When obviously, surely we want this variant to overtake Delta properly so we can wipe it out properly.
So the data shows that even Omicron is more serious than flu. So on average, if you're infected with Omicron, you will have to require hospital care or die than you are from getting the flu. So although it's milder than Delta, it still can cause serious illness. Ideally, we want to reach a stage where through vaccination and booster doses, we eventually bring this under control. And then we could perhaps think about cutting back on testing, cutting back on a lot of our measures that we've got now. But that requires a much higher uptake of vaccines across the UK, particularly the booster vaccine, which has a big effect on Omicron compared to just having 1 or 2 doses of vaccine. And we haven't got many people across the UK who've had no vaccines or just had 1 or 2 doses And it's very important this bill come forwards for their vaccines, because that's the key to trying to get this pandemic under control.
I suppose in a way that is their look at now. They've had plenty of opportunity to get vaccinated. Professor Azim Majid, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Nana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Professor Azim Majid. He's a Professor of Primary Care and Public Health at Imperial College. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. I'm asking, is it time to ditch lateral flow testing? Shauna says yes, but only if they ditch vaccine passports too. Dee says now's the time for herd immunity. Betty says the way things are going, I think that cases are going to shoot up, so people need to be testing. Interesting stuff. Keep your thoughts coming. Still to come, I'll ask my panel what they think, but first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. The Education Secretary has become the first government minister to back reducing the isolation period from 7 to 5 days. Nadeem Zahawi thinks it would help tackle teaching staff shortages, warning absences will rise in the next 2 weeks as pupils return to school. Mr Zahawi is also insisting lat flow tests will remain free, following reports they could be limited to high-risk settings only. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and the Labour Party had criticised the move as wrong-headed. Meanwhile, the UK has reached a total COVID-related death toll of more than 150,000 since the pandemic began. In Australia, court documents claim the government there did not give Novak Djokovic assurance his medical exemption to enter the country would be accepted. His legal team said the authorities indicated he met the requirements for quarantine-free entry. The player Renata Voráčová from the Czech Republic has now left the country after having her visa cancelled. A no-fly zone could be put in place over Windsor Castle. The Metropolitan Police are reviewing security at the Queen's residence. An application has been made for a restriction that would prevent aircraft lower than 2,500 feet passing overhead. It's after an alleged intruder carrying a crossbow was arrested on Christmas Day at the castle. And the Duchess of Cambridge has released 3 new portraits marking turning 40 today. Fashion photographer Paola Versi took the birthday pictures, which show Kate in a series of Alexander McQueen dresses and wearing earrings that once belonged to Princess Diana. I'm back at the top of the hour with more. That's all from me for now. Now back to Nana.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
good afternoon. It's just coming up to 38 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Now back to our great British debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to ditch lateral flow testing? Despite reports the government are planning on scrapping free testing, the Education Secretary, Nadhim Zahawi, says that is not the case. So is it time to ditch them altogether? Let's see what my panel think. Broadcaster Danny Kelly and actor and writer Yanis Morgan. Yanis, lateral flow testing, obviously you took your flow test at some point today. Is it time that we stop doing it, though?
I don't think so. I definitely don't think now is the time. It was interesting listening to your experts saying that we should be more focused in how we use it rather than just everybody getting free tests, maybe storing them at home and not necessarily using them effectively. Because obviously it's part of the government's plan. You've got like a four-prong approach to dealing with the pandemic. So you've got your vaccines, the boosters, lateral flow test, and then the antivirals. So it is a part of that. We just have to make sure we're using it effectively.
Yeah, but what about the fact that, so in America, they did this little test. So there were 30 people who took part. They did a test to find out, whether or not, so they'd been exposed to a lot of people with Omicron specifically. Yeah. And turns out that even though they had it, the majority of them had it, it didn't show that they had it for at least the time where they were most infectious with it, where they could spread it. So the first 3 or whatever days it was, it didn't tell them that. And then, of course, then they were going about their business with this false sense of security that they were okay. Then eventually when the PCR test comes back, says actually you do have it, then you're isolated. But then yes, it is more dangerous than flu. But I had a flu that was horrible. I had a headache, horrible bogies in my nose, all sorts of things. It was nasty. And yet it wasn't Omicron. And I think looking at the people who had Omicron, it was actually worse.
Well, the Professor Zim, was saying that it does detect Omicron. It's worrying if you're saying it doesn't detect it when we're most vulnerable. I know that I've used lateral flow, so I actually had COVID in November. It wasn't the Omicron, it was Delta. But the day I took it, I just felt a little bit under the weather. And I thought I'd take a lateral flow just to make sure. That day I was planning on going on a trip with my dad, and we would have been in the car together for about 3 hours. I didn't think I had the virus, and then I did the test, and suddenly it was there. So on that situation, if there are people vulnerable around you, they just give that peace of mind to take it. But then, like you're saying, if it's not doing its job, that's
that was then, but this is now. This is time has passed, and we've got a different variant on our hands. What do you think?
Well, a couple of really significant things that the Professor said, and I'm glad that he cleared up this garbage. It's almost propaganda that it's just like a normal cold. Sure, for some people it is. The original COVID for some people didn't even have symptoms, so it wasn't even like a cold. But if you do get it, it's more severe than flu, but it's less severe than the Delta. And he also said that Delta is still out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, my father, my beloved father, my best friend, is 88 years old with a lung disease. Every time I go round to his house, before that, I take a lateral flow test. Now, that is my choice, and I think that's common sense. If it doesn't pick up Omicron, now I'd like to know what the statistics are about the efficacy of these tests with Omicron. But for my peace of mind, and for my mum and dad's peace of mind, my wife and I, we always do a test. So Nana, from your perspective, the driving force behind the question, is it one of money saving, efficacy, or herd immunity, or maybe a combination?
Well, it's not really. The money side of it actually isn't the element here. It's more to do, and to be fair, this particular survey was done in America with American lateral flow tests, but they're saying that it would be a similar result in this country. That's what they're saying. It hasn't been done in this country. But my point of view is that how useful it is, because as you said, right, so you've got your elderly father, you've gone on, you've done the test. It doesn't pick up, apparently, and this is what this report in America said. We haven't done it in this country, but it didn't pick up Omicron initially for at least the 3 days where that disease was the most infectious. So you would go to your dad with this lateral flow test that's given you a false sense of security to say that you're okay, when actually you could be the most infectious you're going to be.
But you know that. You're basing this on a study with American lateral flow tests.
But they're saying that it's not. Listen. If you imagine these brands aren't brands we use in this country, but they are of the same thing, right? Different brand, but of the same thing. But if that is the case, and that is the truth with these lateral flow tests as well, then what I'm saying is that it's giving a false sense of security. And seeing as Omicron it doesn't appear to be killing people, and we have lots of medicines and antivirals and all the layers that you've put in place, the boosters, everything you said, then surely it's time to stop. We can't do this forever.
But you know, the key to this is you're saying American study, and I did a bit of research on it, and the UK government do stringent tests on the lateral flows that we're using, and they're saying it is picking up on it. Yeah. If we were to test it, and get back the same results, I'd agree with you. I'd
But
be
we
worried.
haven't done that test, though, you see.
Yeah, so we don't know. So I think we need to do that test. But ultimately, I agree with Danny, and I'm exactly the same when I go to visit my parents. We use a lateral flow test, and you can't, and also my mother-in-law, because we want to protect those. Even though we're saying Omicron is milder, it's still, it is still taking out people.
And we still apply levels of safety, so we'll have the windows open. I'll sit away from my father. We still do apply levels of safety. Now, to get back to the...
what if you had to pay for it, though? If you had to pay
we
for
get
the
them
test?
free from...
But what if you had to pay for the test, then would you still be saying the same thing?
Yeah, of course I would.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't want to harm my dad.
No, but you say that, but my point is that if they don't pick up, and it's true, because there's plenty of people who said, I've taken a lateral flow test and it said I was negative, and then I've come to the PCR and it says I'm positive. I hear that a lot. And the test that I took told me I was negative for Omicron. I didn't manage to get to the time for the PCR test, but had I done so, I don't know, would it have said I had?
But your supposition, if you like, is based on anecdotal evidence. Do you ever hear from people who say that I tested negative on a lateral flow test and then the PCR test?
Yes.
And I think you're more likely to hear people say that they had a false positive, or a false negative, sorry, than you are for people to say
but people don't tend to report that, do they? They're more likely to tell you about whether they've had...
That's correct.
But this is the thing. If now we have a variant that could almost act as a vaccine, and we actually would like it to take over from the Delta variant, because for sure that would be what you'd want, because it's a lot weaker, and we know this is a fact now, we've accepted that that is the case, then I'm just wondering, how deadly does it have to be before we actually stop? Because that's why I'm saying, is it time now? Is this the right moment to allow this Omicron to gently, calmly spread, to overtake Delta, which, as you said, is still out there, and then we can carry on with our lives, because we'll all have a level of proper herd immunity?
It's going to do that anyway, and the talk is going from a pandemic to an endemic. One thing we've got to stress is that the government is saying there are no plans to ditch lateral flows. They've just ordered, I think, in January, over 400 million lateral flow tests. So I don't see them going away anywhere anytime soon. But I totally agree with the professor. We need to be more strategic in how we use them.
Yeah, and also Nazim Zahawi has said that the report in the Times is complete baloney anyway.
Yeah.
So our conversation, a facet of this whole debate is based on something that isn't accurate. He's actually said we have no plans to charge it.
Well, but this isn't about... I'm not basing my views on that article. I'm basing what I'm saying on looking at all the evidence I've seen with regard to Omicron, and also listening to what the South Africans have been saying about it, how they're slightly confused at the approach. And part of me thinks that a portion of this heavy-handed approach could be, and I mean, as much as I respect Boris Johnson, could be because obviously he was in a bit of mire earlier because of all these parties and everything. And it's a very good distraction, even though, yes, it is relevant to protect people, it's necessary. But I think there is an element of that in here. But whilst I do respect Boris, and I don't feel, I'm not comfortable with people constantly going on at him about these parties.
Other world leaders who haven't been caught with the pants down, that metaphorically, obviously not literally, they haven't continued heavy-handed lockdowns, have they? It's not like there's pressure on them, maybe people to turn...
Well, Joe Biden's pretty much, I don't know whether you can take any notice of what he's doing.
Look at Australia, we're talking about Novax, as you call it.
Novax, yes.
Yeah. Like Melbourne is one of the most lockdown cities on the planet. Now, the politicians who make those decisions aren't doing it because they've got a scandal involving wallpaper.
Yeah, but they don't. I mean, they have a very virgin kind of population to COVID anyway. We've already had it ripped through. We've had different variants of it. We've all got baseline immunity. If you haven't caught it already, you'd have had the vaccines, or maybe 2 or 3. So we are, as a country, in a very different position to Australia. I don't know whether you can compare us to them.
It's going to happen. We're just saying when is the right time to start phasing
right.
out. I don't think now is the right time.
I think we're heading towards it, but it's our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to ditch lateral flow testing? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Milton says, why would we? I like to know when I visit vulnerable relatives that I'm negative. Gordon says, this is long overdue, but I think that the UK public are addicted to testing. I'm sort of with you there. I think we are getting a little bit like that. Jay says, the amount of plastic waste that these tests create will probably cause more havoc than COVID itself. Agreed. And also there's that whole thing where people are being put out of work for a long period of time, and they're talking about shortening the isolation period. Now, Paul says hospitalisations have not gone away, and neither have deaths. We still need to be cautious. But can you have zero deaths? I don't think you can. David says yes, but in conjunction with vaccine passports, they should be dumped. If the tests are scrapped and passports remain, then people who don't get a jab are blocked from social spaces entirely. There's also a poll up on Twitter today throughout the show, and I'm asking, should we ditch lateral flow testing? And let's see, currently, 80% of you say yes, we should. Interesting stuff. See, they're sort of on my side with this.
Wow, I'm surprised by that. 80%.
Really? Well, because I think I do think that at the moment there is a moment where I feel that we're getting slightly addicted to this testing. There has to be a point where you say, I'm going to come off this thing now. And I think we need to wean ourselves off it gradually because it's not really telling us very much anymore. It's not as relevant. If at the beginning you're more infectious when it tells you no, that you're not positive, then I'm beginning to, and the thing isn't as deadly, I'm beginning to wonder...
Nana, I will listen to the doctors, not my favourite television presenter.
Well, that's just, but that's just my view. Yeah. Your favourite TV presenter has a view. You can listen to whoever you like. Listen to whoever you like. Now, get out of my pub. Get off my show. Still to come after the break, I'll be joined by Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society to discuss the threat of invasion of Ukraine by Russia. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says such a move would come at a severe cost to Moscow. But first, let's get another update with your weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead then to this evening's weather, and the UK looking rather drier with showers easing and clear spells, although rain arrives in the southwest. Let's take a look at the detail then. The southwest of England already cloudy with hill fog edging eastwards. Outbreaks of rain already across much of Devon and Cornwall. In contrast, drier and clearer across the southeast. Winds will be easing, which will allow temperatures to fall away. It's going to be much drier for South Wales, but cloud already thickening from the southwest with some hill fog and light rain possible. And much clearer skies across the Midlands, where it's going to be mostly dry. The odd shower possible there, especially towards the north, but remaining mostly dry. Temperatures falling away under clear skies. And those showers easing over the northeast of England this evening, with increasing amounts of clear skies developing, those clearing skies, easing, winds allowing temperatures to quickly fall away after sunset. And a similar picture too for Scotland. Clear skies again developing as those showers ease into the evening, turning colder under the skies, especially in the east. So although it's a dry end to the day for Northern Ireland, high cloud will already be edging eastwards through the evening, helping to keep those temperatures a little milder. And looking ahead to tomorrow, cloud and hill fog gradually edging eastwards overnight, with patchy outbreaks of rain and drizzle affecting many western areas. And that's how the weather's shaping up overnight into tomorrow and for tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 53 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on digital radio and on your TV. Now, I'm joined in the studio by this man later on at 5. No, not him. No. This is the former Apprentice. It's a former Apprentice star.
Mate, what blokes want to drive a bike of red wheels? Mate, they just smashed it up. They had one thing I told them to do, they've ignored me completely, like I'm a muppet, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong and I just got the over nothing. That's what I'm hoping happens.
Now, that is, of course, the voice of the former Apprentice star, Tom Skinner, an entrepreneur and owner of Bosch Beds. He'll be talking to me about his time on the show, and if you've been watching The Apprentice, it's fabulous, isn't it? And what he makes of the current series and the platform that it gave him for building up his own successful business. But first, it's time to take a look at what's making the headlines away from our shores. And on the agenda today, the Foreign Secretary says any invasion of the Ukraine by Russia would be a massive strategic mistake. Liz Truss told MPs that such a move would come at a severe cost to Moscow. So I'm joined by Alan Mendoza. He's a co-founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, a transatlantic foreign policy and national security think tank. So, Alan, can you just... So a lot of people might be slightly confused by exactly what's going on. So can you, summarise it for us in just a couple of minutes, just to explain what exactly is happening?
Well, very simply, Vladimir Putin has amassed over 100,000 troops on Russia's western and southern borders at the Ukrainian border. And the suspicion is that he is seeking to invade Ukraine. We don't know whether he is or isn't, but the troop build-up is sufficient to be an invasion force. And as you all remember, he's been in Ukraine, in Crimea and eastern Ukraine, essentially for the last 6-7 years. Anyway, the feeling is now there's a lot of saber-rattling going on, a lot of demands from Mr. Putin. And the question is, what is he intending to do here? And I think the Foreign Secretary and the US Secretary of State and the US President have been quite concerned about this build-up, and we want answers from Mr. Putin about what he's actually playing at.
What do you think, if you're to be sort of having a guess at what he's doing? What is he doing?
Well, the thing with Putin is there are several options always. Now, option number one is he just wants a victory of some kind. Now, what does that mean? He is saying to everyone, NATO is trying to, kind of take over Ukraine. I want you to promise you will never admit Ukraine into NATO. Now, NATO isn't looking to take over Ukraine, and there are no plans right now for Ukraine to be in NATO. So somehow there is a statement that happens and he gets a victory. It could, of course, be that he actually does want to invade Ukraine. I mean, he is annoyed with the direction of travel in Ukraine. He's also particularly annoyed about the eastern provinces not having been reintegrated back into Ukraine under a structure which gives him essential power within the Ukrainian system. So that could be something he's after as well, that sort of approach. And finally, all of this is bound up into gas politics as well. Don't forget, Russia has the gas monopoly into Europe, and he may be seeking to kind of saber-rattle at Europe as well, to say, I've got my kind of foot on your neck, basically, when it comes to gas supply. I want a victory or else I'm going to punish you another way. And there's also linked to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which he's been trying to get approved in Germany, which the Germans have been a bit skittish about. So there are lots of potential things he could be after. As always with Putin, trying to deduce which one of them it is an imprecise science.
But maybe he could be doing a sort of Boris Johnson distraction tactic where he's actually doing something completely different, but you've got your eye on the ball of Ukraine. Because why do we actually care? How does this impact us here in the UK?
Well, it impacts on 2 or 3 different levels. Firstly, if there is a conflict in Ukraine, then because we have been signing agreements with the Ukrainian government, and essentially Ukraine is a democratic ally of ours, although we're not going to be dragged into a shooting war, there would definitely be a need for us to respond in some way, shape or form. We can't allow aggression of that kind against democratic states and do nothing about it. So we are going to be dragged in should he invade. Even if he doesn't invade, though, if he tries to get Nord Stream 2 through, that gives him more power in gas politics. Now, although we don't have much of our gas supply coming from Russia, if the Europeans are beholden to him, that gives him tremendous strategic power. And,
But why do we care? I mean, that's them. We're doing our own thing.
Alas, we are still tied to Europe by geography, if nothing more.
Of course,
so, for example, the Russians constantly buzz our airspace and also invade our sea space with their submarines. Now, that's got nothing to do, essentially, with continental Europe, but we are tied into the same boat as them.
What is that? So sort of an act of passive aggression to sort of be in someone's space when you're really not supposed to be there. Is that what that is?
Correct. It's showing his power, showing that I am more powerful than you, and I intend to, you go against me at your peril. Now, the reality is we don't want Putin to be, kind of riding roughshod across all of Europe, because that brings him closer to us in that regard as well. And he's shown his willingness to interfere in all sorts of things in the UK. Remember, he's ordered murders in the Ukraine, in the UK. He has, of course, attempted to influence politics in various ways. He is a constant meddler in our, kind of daily lives, and we don't want that to continue. So as a result, we want to ensure that Putin is put back into his box as much as possible. And to go, this is none of our business, isn't reflective of the reality that he's made it our business already over the past few years.
Do you not think that we could be in actually putting our hand into a hornet's nest ultimately? Because this, to me, sounds like a sort of a tactic of distraction and intimidation, passive aggression, to try and get us to react in a way that will justify any further actions that the other side make. Well, what would happen if we did nothing?
Well, if we did nothing and he invaded Ukraine and then took over Ukraine, then you would see Russia's borders move closer to our NATO allies.
But wasn't it part of the USSR anyway before this? When it broke up, when the Soviet Union broke up, was Ukraine? No, but I'm just asking. No, but I'm just asking though as a question. I mean, I don't know whether it's good or bad.
The history of it, of course, is that in 1991 the Soviet Union breaks up, and that includes, of course, countries like Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia that are now, of course, in the EU. Ukraine also broke free. Kazakhstan, where we've seen all the news in the last few days, another country that sort of broke free of the Soviet Union. So all these countries were indeed part of the Soviet Union, but that doesn't in any way, shape or form mean that we should allow them to go back into a greater Russia. On the contrary, to do so would be firstly to negate whatever's been happening there for the last 20 years, but secondly, it brings NATO allies into the direct line of fire, and that's where it does become a British issue, because we are part of NATO. It is an alliance we've always felt strongly about, and we need to defend it.
Interesting stuff. Wow. Part 2, ding, ding, roll on. That's quite worrying, isn't it? It's ultimately quite worrying. Well, that's Alan Mendoza. He's the That was Alan Mendoza. He was a co-founder and executive director for the Henry Jackson Society. Hello and welcome. If you've just tuned in, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on your TV and on your digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today is broadcaster Danny Kelly and actor and writer Yanis Morgan. Still to come, each Sunday I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at their life after the job. We'll talk the highs and lows and lessons learnt and what comes next on the outside. And with The Apprentice back on our TV screens this week, today I'll be meeting this man.
Mate, what blokes want to drive a bike of red wheels? Mate, they just smashed it up. They had one thing I told them to do, they've ignored me completely, like I'm a muppet, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong and I just got the over nothing. That's what I'm hoping happens.
Yes, that is, of course, the voice of the former star of the show, Tom Skinner, an entrepreneur and owner of Bosch Beds. The Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is the tide turning on electric vehicles? In December last year, electric cars accounted for over a quarter of all new car sales. And this week, Mercedes unveiled a new electric concept car, which it claims can travel 620 miles on a single charge. I'll be joined by motoring journalist Quentin Wilson, who was the first UK journalist to drive an electric car back in the 90s. And as ever, I want to hear your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not send me a tweet at gbnews. But first, let's get your latest headlines.
Good evening, I'm Polly Middlehurst and this is your GB News at 5 o'clock. The Education Secretary has become the first government minister to back reducing the isolation period from 7 to 5 days, as he thinks it would help tackle teaching staff shortages. Nadeem Zahawi says there's no doubt staff absences will rise as pupils return to school and that the next 2 weeks will be bumpy. Mr Zahawi is also insisting lateral flow tests will remain free, following reports they could be limited to high-risk settings. Meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and the Labour Party had criticised the idea as wrong-headed. But Mr Zahawi says he's puzzled by a report in the Sunday Times newspaper which suggested that their universal availability may be axed. Meanwhile, the UK has reached a total COVID-related death toll of more than 150,000 since the pandemic began. To Australia now, where court documents claim the government there did not give Novak Djokovic an assurance that his medical exemption to enter the country would be accepted. The tennis player's legal team has said the authorities indicated he met the requirements for the quarantine-free entry. Djokovic is spending a fourth day in an immigration detention centre ahead of a court hearing tomorrow. One immigration lawyer says there's a lot at stake for the world number one.
He has to win it, otherwise he faces a re-entry ban of 3 years to 10 years. Oh, wow. Potentially losing millions of dollars. Yeah. So I think he's stuck in that place where he knows that if I get deported now, I won't be allowed back for a minimum 3 years, hence losing a lot of money. So it's something that he has to win, perhaps in a situation where if he'd just walked away at the start, it might not have got this far.
The Housing Secretary is expected to put pressure on developers to pay to replace dangerous cladding on low-rise flats. Michael Gove will set out his plans for helping leaseholders trapped in unsafe and unsellable homes tomorrow. But Labour says other non-cladding related costs need to be included in his announcement. Darren Matthews is a leaseholder. He says the measures should be enforced rather than voluntary.
I don't honestly think, in my opinion, developers will make a voluntary contribution. I think the only way that they will make a contribution and have any responsibility is if it's under legal duress, if it's enshrined in law, if it's there in black and white. This is your responsibility, these are consequences. If you don't do it, we'll come after you. They're not going to make a voluntary contribution.
Morrison's is to scrap use-by dates on most of its milk from the end of January in a bid to reduce food waste. The supermarket will instead replace best before dates on 90% of its own brand milk and encourage customers to use a sniff test to check quality. It believes this will stop millions of pints of its own brand milk from being thrown away every year. The biggest ever space telescope mirror has now moved into place and could soon explore the depths of our universe. Engineers from NASA and the European Space Agency celebrated as its 18 hexagonal mirror segments straightened out into their full shape.
We have a fully deployed JWST observatory.
All right. Yes.
Well, they're celebrating the James Webb Space Telescope, which was launched by rocket on Christmas Day. A young boy lost in the chaos of the Afghanistan airlift has been reunited with his relatives. Sohail Ahmadi was 2 months old when he was handed over to a soldier across an airport wall in Kabul. 29-year-old taxi driver Hamid Safi found him in the airport and took him in. Sohail was finally reunited with his grandfather and other relatives in Kabul on Sunday. The Duchess of Cambridge has released 3 new portraits to mark turning 40 today. Kate Middleton poses in 3 different Alexander McQueen dresses for the fashion photographer Paola Reversi. And she also wore earrings that once belonged to Princess Diana. The photographs were taken at Kew Gardens in November last year and will now enter the permanent collection of the National Portrait Gallery. I'll bring you the latest news headlines in half an hour. Until then, back to Nana.
It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. You're watching either on TV or listening on digital radio. So it's time for Outside, which is the part of the show where I talk to a politician, celebrity, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career. And this week, it's former Apprentice candidate who was synonymous with the phrase bosh, Tom Skinner. Here he is in action on the show.
Mate, what blokes want to drive a bike of red wheels? Mate, they just smashed it up. They had one thing I told them to do, they've ignored me completely, like I'm a muppet, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong and I just got the over nothing. That's what I'm hoping happens.
Now, unfortunately, Tom wasn't hired by Lord Sugar, but that didn't stop him. He's a successful business owner with the aptly named Bosch Beds, and I'm pleased to say he's joining me in the studio now. Tom.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. So, how does it feel then? What was it like being part of the Apprentice? I mean, what was it like to watch yourself back on there?
Blinding. I loved it. It's the best thing I've ever done, you know? Like, I can't explain to you how hard it was, but fun at the same time. It was just a different experience.
Yeah, what was Sir Alan like? Did you sort of connect with him?
Oh, he's a proper geezer, honestly. Yeah. When you watch a show, he comes across as a right scary fella. But in real life, when you meet him, he's a nice man.
Yeah, I think he comes across as that. I mean, have you been watching any of this ones?
Yeah, well, the first one was last week.
I know.
Obviously, I watched that. I thought it was brilliant.
But they're so... I mean, I'm sorry to say, but they're so stupid.
And they need men in there, don't they? That's what it is.
They do. I mean, they seem a bit stupid. I mean, in your first one, when you were doing it, did you think, God, these people, they don't really have the sort of sense? Because when I watched last week's, it was like, well, just win first, and then you'll be fine.
What it is, because obviously I've lived it, been on it, done it myself, You are on a TV show, so as much business element it is, which it is, they still want to make it like a TV show, make it a bit funny. So they're going to trip you up and slip you up on the way. But there was a couple of donuts on the new one.
I wasn't there. And did you think he fired the right person?
That geezer was cracking up. That Harry. I thought he was funny because he kept getting involved, but he was just unlucky, really.
Yeah, he was a bit unlucky. So you got onto The Apprentice. How far did you get?
So I got the task number 9 out of 10 tasks. Then you got the final. They weren't bad, but didn't make it the whole way. But
what was your favourite one? Because there was that turtle thing that you came up with. I thought it was better than
the talking turtle. Yeah. That's a line. People love that thing. People talk about that now. I should have started selling that, really.
Yeah.
But my favourite task was I like doing the ice lolly task. We had to make ice lollies and sell them. That was good fun, and I ate half of them as well because I love an ice lolly. They was all really good. Everyone was different. Everyone was about different things. It was all good fun.
So you did The Apprentice. Then what happened? Because you almost won it pretty much. If you get 9, there's only 10 chances.
Well, it was so at the time. So my business was I was on market stalls and used to buy and sell, and I'd done a bit of bedding and pillows. That was my business, and I went on to get Lord Sugar's investment to build my pillow and mattress company. Went on the show. And literally, as I was going through, getting more and more popular on social media and people were talking about it. And then next thing you know, bang, people started buying me pillows online. And it was like a avalanche effect. I had all my mates just ringing and going, listen, you've got to get down the unit and help me stuff pillows in these bags.
Really?
It was madness.
Amazing.
And it sort of took off from there. And then we formed Bosch Beds. And we've really cracked on. We make everything in the UK. I'm really big about making the UK, everything. We all our mattresses, all our beds, all our pillows, everything's made here with love in the UK.
Yeah.
Top quality products at discounted prices. We are the fastest growing mattress retailer in the UK at the minute.
Well, why did you choose pillows and beds though? It seems a bit of an odd thing.
What does every single person sleep on?
Well, sleep on a bed.
Exactly.
But what about? But is there any particular reason though for you? I mean, were you one day on a bed and said, "Oh, this is so uncomfortable"?
There was definitely a niche in the market. Now we go to all these massive retail, all these big stores, and all they want to do is pull your trousers down. They want to charge you thousands of pounds. They want to make you wait weeks for delivery, and you don't know where it comes from. Normally made somewhere in China. So I thought, right, I want to make quality products, which is what I do. The best matches, but I want them to be affordable. I don't want people going and paying £3,000, £4,000, £5,000. I want them to walk in and go, right, that one I still there is £400, delivered to your front door in 2 days, and it's just as good as a £2,000 mattress from the big boys. Just as got Bosch Beds on it, not whatever it is.
So you don't do bed frames as well, that you just...
Of course, do frames,
Really?
mattresses, the lot.
Oh,
headboards.
What's your biggest selling, the best-selling bed you've got? And how much does it cost?
My best-selling mattress is my aloe vera mattress.
Aloe vera mattress?
Aloe vera, it's got aloe vera gel in it, so it stops things like migraines, helps blood circulation. And that in a double is £449, delivered to your front door with a manufacturer's guarantee, and it's made in the UK.
That's pretty good, isn't it? So you set up this company now, obviously coming out of The Apprentice. It's been super successful. In terms of your own personal life, what's happened there then? Are you married? Have you got kids?
Yes, I'm with Sinead. We're getting married this year.
Lovely.
She's actually the one who applied me to go on The Apprentice.
I see.
She filled all the forms out for me to go on it. So it's down to my success, really. And yeah, we're getting married. We've got a little boy called Henry who's 1.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, I took him over the park earlier before I come down here. Had a massive roasting. That's why I'm looking a bit stuffed today. Now I'm on the news of you.
They're so cute though, aren't they, when they're little and they're 1. I've got a little one who's 4.
Have you half this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite old though to have a 4-year-old.
No, you're not.
How old do you think I am?
I reckon you're the same age as me.
Which is what?
Well, I'm 30. I'm 31 next week.
No, I'm 50.
No way.
I know.
You're 50?
I am, yes, 50. 50, proud of it as well. Add one at 46, yeah. Sorry, I'm just doing a Tommy, I can't resist. I'm actually from Essex, so that's where it's coming out.
Yeah, whereabouts?
Chelmsford, yeah.
I've just moved out to Brentwood.
Have you? Oh, it's lovely as well. Oh, it's very nice around there. Stockbroker belt, that's what they call it.
No, not right. It's all right.
It's like a really huge house with a very nice bed, I should imagine.
Got a lovely bed.
Yeah, yeah. So this is good because what do you think about this day? Because a lot of people saying, obviously Liz Truss is signing all these trade deals now with other countries, but this is really trying to focus on British business as well. How has that affected you, the whole Brexit thing? Is it a good thing or a bad thing for your
Obviously, a lot of companies are struggling because of Brexit. A lot of companies are doing well because of Brexit. Now, I'm all about making everything in the UK, you know, and I've noticed things. I've noticed a lot of companies that aren't there that was there when I started trading. I know there's a lot of companies that are struggling, but then I know some that are doing phenomenally well. So for me, look, we're always going to make in Britain. You know, my materials are going to come from Britain, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's the best thing, though. But because I love the fact, I think there should be a big campaign saying "Buy British," just to get people to promote local businesses.
That's it. Look, it's all about UK manufacturing, UK materials, UK products, UK built. That's what I do.
And how did the pandemic affect you as well? Because obviously people staying in.
I'll be honest with you. The pandemic is where we really grew.
Okay.
Because there was millions and millions and millions of people in the country who were indoors, and everyone was still getting their furlough, but people couldn't go out, they couldn't go to the shops. Now, they could still buy mattresses and beds. And what seemed to happen was people was in their houses and thought, well, we're going to be stuck in here for a little while. I might as well go and buy a new bed off that Tom Skinner from The Apprentice.
Exactly. I can do my work from my bed. I need a decent bed.
boshbeds.co.uk, that's when it's filmed. And me and my pal Big Lanks, we literally sat in a van, just me and him, and we drove around all the country dropping off beds. Because there was no one else on the road, we was getting 30 deliveries a day in the day.
Wow.
And we built it up to 4. We've got 4 vans, plus our outsourced couriers, every single day going out, and yeah, it's going well.
And do you still do you talk to Sir Alan Sugar? Does he ever get in touch?
Every now and then, I mean, he sent me a text saying Happy New Year on New Year's Day, and I sent one back to him when we had a chat just before Christmas. So every now and then we'd have a nice little chat, and that's it, yeah.
Oh, bless him. I think he looks like a little cuddly rogue. He's quite short, isn't he?
He's quite small, yeah.
He's quite little, isn't he? But he packs a punch. I mean, he's a small guy, but my goodness, what a powerful man, and what a brilliant guy he is as well. Have you, seeing The Apprentice, any ideas on who you think is going to win? Can you remember any of them?
Yes, so there's a girl called Sophie. I think she's going to do well. A girl called Catherine as well. She was the PM.
Yeah.
She's going to do well.
The one who did Bougie Cruises?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, because she didn't take anything.
No, but I think the way she was, she held it in charge, and everyone listened to her, so she's going to do well.
Yeah.
And the boys, they had an absolute mare. I mean...
that banana that looked like...
Yeah, well, it looked like a pony, didn't it? It was a turd. It was a turd.
It did look like a pony, if that's offensive to anyone. But if you'd seen it, it did look like a banana shaped in the colours of something that would come out of your bottom. And the worst thing about it was they were talking about cruises. So it was like, go on my cruise and you'll end up doing one of these.
Yeah, lovely.
Not great. Well, if people want to, find out more about your thing, what's the website? Where can it go?
boshbeds.co.uk. Go on there, the phone number's on there, give us a call. We've got a little sales team in the office, they'll talk to you, I'm normally in the office, you can ring it, I can answer the phone.
You speak to him?
Of course, speak to me.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, listen, keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Fabulous thing you're doing so well. And keep in touch, yeah?
Will do.
Fabulous.
See you
fabulous.
soon.
Yeah, thank you for joining me on Outside. If you just tuned in, that is, of course, Tom Skinner. He's the Apprentice star and an entrepreneur. Still to come, if you've just tuned in, this is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. You may be listening on DAB or watching on TV. Coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is the tide turning on electric cars? There's been suggestions that electric vehicles are becoming more attractive and practical for motorists after Mercedes unveiled an electric concept car with a range of 620 miles. Get out! First, though, it's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead then to this evening's weather, and the UK looking rather drier with showers easing and clear spells, although rain arrives in the southwest. Let's take a look at the detail then. The southwest of England already cloudy with hill fog edging eastwards. Outbreaks of rain already across much of Devon and Cornwall. In contrast, drier and clearer across the southeast. Winds will be easing, which will allow temperatures to fall away. It's going to be much drier for South Wales, but cloud already thickening from the southwest with some hill fog and light rain possible. And much clearer skies across the Midlands, where it's going to be mostly dry. The odd shower possible there, especially towards the north, but remaining mostly dry. Temperatures falling away under clear skies. And those showers easing over the northeast of England this evening, with increasing amounts of clear skies developing. Those clearing skies easing, winds allowing temperatures to quickly fall away after sunset. And a similar picture too for Scotland. Clear skies again developing as those showers ease into the evening, turning colder under the skies, especially in the east. So although it's a dry end of the day for Northern Ireland, high cloud will already be edging eastwards through the evening, helping to keep those temperatures a little milder. And looking ahead to tomorrow, cloud and hill fog gradually edging eastwards overnight, with patchy outbreaks of rain and drizzle affecting many western areas. And that's how the weather's shaping up overnight into tomorrow and for tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It's fast approaching 22 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. You're either watching on TV or listening on digital radio. So it's time now for our Great British debate this hour. And I'm asking whether the tide is turning on electric vehicles. With lengthy charging times, a lack of charging points and low ranges, you'd be forgiven for taking a dim view of making the swap from petrol or diesel. But it seems they might be becoming more convenient. Mercedes have just unveiled a new electric concept car, which it claims can travel 620 miles on a single charge. And it seems more of us are buying the battery-powered vehicles. In December, electric cars accounted for over a quarter of all new car sales. So is the tide turning on electric vehicles? I'm joined by motoring journalist and presenter Quentin Wilson. He's also the co-founder of Fair Charge, which promotes electric vehicles. So, Quentin, welcome. Talk to me about your cars, because take me back to the 1990s, because you became the first UK journalist to drive an electric car.
Well, it was GM's EV1, their £1 billion electric car, which was so good that they decided not to sell it, and they crushed them all. So I'm in LA, Sunset Boulevard, 4 top gear, driving this car, and I'm absolutely amazed how smooth and how quiet and how efficient it is. So fast forward onto the kind of early 90s, and I started buying these things myself and driving them, much to Jeremy Clarkson's mockery. And they were, as you said in your intro, they were slow. They didn't really have much charge, much range, and there was no infrastructure. But now here we are, and I've got an electric car that will drive me from the Midlands to London and back in one charge. That's nearly 250 miles. And you can buy lots of electric cars that regularly do those sort of mileages. And infrastructure is getting better. So yes, to answer your question, looking at the sales figures, we are at a stage where the electric car is now going to become the default option for lots and lots of people. And here's one really quite stunning fact that came out in the last month, and that is that a Tesla Model 3 has displaced the Ford Fiesta as the second best-selling car in the UK. And the Fiesta's been on that podium for, 12 years? So for an electric car to move one of Britain's best-loved petrol and diesel cars off that podium is really quite an achievement and a significant signal.
But a lot of people might listen to that and think, well, it's all right for you. Electric cars are pretty expensive. And the infrastructure that you know that we've discussed, we've talked about, that is improving, isn't really there. I mean, there's no way that I could plug an electric car into something near my house, because I have a little front gardening thing, and I'd have to have a cable that runs down the path, and then I'm not guaranteed a space right next to my house. And for me, it's not a reality. And if I look at the space on the road as well, there aren't enough spaces for the cars that are there. So how can we get charging points? It doesn't add up to me.
Well, I charged my electric car the other day in London from a lamppost, and we're going to see more and more of these things, and charging centres. So you might not have the charging facilities outside your house or flat, but you'll be able to go to a fast charging point where you can just put in 300 or 400 miles when we get the bigger batteries in the next couple of years, and then have that for the rest of the week. So the infrastructure isn't here, you're absolutely right, but it's getting a lot better. I never have to worry about where to charge my car, because I can always find somewhere to do it. And range anxiety has kind of disappeared, because these cars now do these amazing ranges. And going back to the idea about they cost more, sure, they cost more up front. But when you look at the depreciation of electric cars, I mean, the Teslas are hardly losing anything at all, and some of them are actually going up in value. So when you factor that in, your whole life cost of an electric car over 3 years is significantly less than a petrol or diesel car. So these barriers, they now become urban myths. And when you look at it, the viability and the low cost and the desirability of an electric car is growing and growing.
What about the length of time that an electric car can survive? So, for example, like my mobile phone, the battery within about 2 years starts to become extremely inefficient. And I'm thinking, how many times? I mean, and when I do replace the phone, it won't be just the battery, it'll be the entire phone. So I'm looking at it as somebody buying one and thinking, well, won't I have to replace the whole thing when the battery goes?
Okay, that's another urban myth, Nana, that the batteries are like the batteries in your phone. They're not. They're completely different. And the data we've got so far after, 10 years and millions of miles of electric cars is that the batteries are not degrading. And they will, in all probably, outlast the chassis of the car. If you take, we've got Nissan Leafs being run on taxi firms that have done 350,000 miles on the original battery packs. Tesla's doing 400,000 miles. All that anecdotal evidence is coming in that we're seeing that battery failure just isn't happening. People predicted it would happen. You'd need a new battery in 3 years or 4 years. That's not the case. We've got battery packs that are lasting 10, sometimes even 15 years. So again, that's another urban myth that you just, it's just factually inaccurate.
What about, because it's all sort of one unit, so with the petrol and diesel cars, when things go wrong, the more the car is electrified, the more difficult it is to replace things when they go wrong, and it becomes more expensive. Everything's in little units. What about that part of it as well? It'd be very difficult to fix elements of this car if anything goes wrong. For example, there's things that I can fix on my car because, I'm not an expert, but on electric cars, surely things are a lot more complicated.
Well, you could, yes, sure. The battery is a fixed pack, and there are people, and we will see a market of this where you might be able to replace individual cells and increase the battery life. But you've got to remember there are so few moving parts on electric cars. So you've no oil, no cam belts, no camshafts, no alternators. The parts failure is going to be very, very small because the amount of moving parts is probably 300, whereas you've got 10,000 moving parts in the average.
One more question for him, and it was the killer question. Get him back. Right, let's see what the panel think then, because I've got to start. Let's go over straight to Danny. You're a car salesperson.
Car dealer.
Yeah, you're a car dealer.
A couple of things. I'm a big fan of Quentin Wilson's. Yeah. I think he's a fabulous journalist. And it's refreshing, and it's good to hear that maybe the urban myth is that the finite lifespan of a battery is a lot longer than we first thought. Is he back?
I think we've got him back, yes. Sorry, Quentin, I think we've managed to get you back. So Quentin, sorry, carry on with what you were saying, because I was listening. We're talking about the car parts and how replaceable they are when things go wrong.
So you've got so few parts in an electric car compared to the 5,000 to 10,000 parts in a combustion car that there's not going to be that stuff you can do, sure, but there's not going to be the component failure rate. And I've run electric cars for the last 7 years, and the most I've had to do will be wiper blades and cabin pollen filters, and they're just not costing anything in servicing at all. You have to rotate your tyres, but you haven't got changing the exhaust, changing the battery, changing the cam belts, plugs, injectors, trunnions, all that sort of stuff. The amount of maintenance is so limited because the amount of maintenance that's necessary is so limited.
Well, you've owned these electric cars then for years, so you must have got yourself into situations where they sort of break down because, as you said, it's only just got a bit better, or where they actually run out of battery. I thought when they run out of juice, OK, so you won't know. But then if they run out of juice, I thought that it's very difficult for anyone to tow you away.
Yeah, you've got to have the right person to be able to tow you around. But ask yourself just this question. Have we seen on our hard shoulders over the last 10 years scores and scores of electric cars broken down because they're out of juice? No. You ask to the AA and you'll get more people, calling them out for misfueling than you will for running out of juice. It's just not happening. And if it was, I think we'd know about it, wouldn't we?
Well, I don't know. That's why I'm asking, because there are fewer of them around, right? So you're less likely to see that happen at the moment. But as they increase, I'm wondering Can they be towed? I mean, can they? Is it yes or no?
Yes, they can be towed. Yeah. It's like an automatic. You have to, lift up and put it into neutral and go. So that's not a problem. But you've got to understand, there's a lot of anti-EV stuff now. It really is, because as the oil industry and the auto industry begins to see that these cars really are catching on, and they're a disruptor. So they're lobbying to make sure that there's so much negative stuff coming out about EVs. And I say to people who are thinking about changing, just don't listen to all that and talk to someone who has got an electric car, and you will find that they will never, ever turn back. There's that, what I call the Damascene moment, where you get into an electric car for the first time, full of all these prejudices and inherited urban myths, and you drive it and you think, whoa, this is the future. And that was me on Sunset Boulevard back in 1996 for Top Gear.
Wow, listen, Quentin, it's really good to talk to you. We'll see if that future comes true. That's where we're heading. Thank you so much. That's Quentin Wilson. He's a motoring journalist and presenter. Right, let's have a look at what you've been saying. And I've been asking, is the tide turning on electric vehicles? And John says, would love one. They're not cheap, though, so unaffordable. I know, I think the average price for them is about £44,000. Sean says, I think electric cars are a danger to our public spaces, and that they need those cumbersome charging points. Michael says, I think electric cars are great as they don't clog up our air with fumes. We should look to all buy them. Interesting stuff. Keep your thoughts coming. We'll have the big discussion in our Great British Debate. I'm asking, is the tide turning on electric cars? Keep your thoughts coming. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good evening. The Education Secretary has become the first government minister to back reducing the COVID-19 isolation period from 7 to 5 days. Nadeem Zahawi thinks it would help tackle teaching staff shortages, warning absences will rise in the next 2 weeks as pupils return to school. Mr Zahawi is also insisting lateral flow tests will remain free, following some reports they could be limited to high-risk settings only. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and the Labour Party had criticised the move as wrong-headed. Meanwhile, the UK has reached a total COVID-related death toll of more than 150,000 people since the pandemic began. Court documents claim Australia's government did not give Novak Djokovic assurance his medical exemption to enter the country would be accepted. His legal team said authorities indicated he met the requirements for quarantine-free entry. Player Renata Vorokova from the Czech Republic has now left the country after having her visa cancelled. And here, Morrison's will replace use-by with best-before dates on 90% of its own brand milk by the end of January. The supermarket is encouraging customers to use a sniff test to check quality in a bid to reduce food waste. A young boy lost in the chaos of the Afghanistan airlift has been reunited with his relatives. Sahal Ahmadi was 2 months old when he was handed over to a soldier across an airport wall in Kabul. Taxi driver Hamid Safi found him in the airport and finally reunited with his relatives on Saturday. The Duchess of Cambridge has released 3 new portraits to mark turning 40 today. Fashion photographer Paola Reversi took the birthday pictures, which show Kate in a series of Alexander McQueen dresses and wearing earrings which once belonged to Princess Diana. That's all from me. I'm back in half an hour.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Dan Wootton, join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. It's just coming up to 37 minutes after 5 o'clock. You're either listening on digital radio or watching live on TV, but we're coming back to our great British debate this hour. I'm asking if the tide is turning on electric vehicles. Now, it's after sales boomed last month, accounting for 26% of all new car sales in the UK. So let's see what my panel think. I have with me writer and actor Yanis Morgan, also broadcaster Danny Kelly. I'm going to start with you, Danny, because you are in the trade, in the car dealing trade.
Yeah.
Quentin has just spoken about how electric vehicles are really catching on. He's had them since the 90s. He made a very convincing case for them being super efficient.
Yeah. Well, a number of things. The reason that the Fiesta is below the Tesla as far as sales are concerned, and I think Quentin should have maybe clarified it, is not because the Fiesta is underselling. It's because Ford have produced something called the Puma, which is like a Fiesta on steroids. So people are going, as the market tells us, they're going slightly bigger. So that's not a selling point, in my opinion. There's also in December, there were a big shortage of new cars, petrol and diesel cars. So it's very impressive to say a quarter of all the market. So you need to understand all of the statistics around it. I'm fortunate enough to be an affiliate of a warranty company that Quentin Wilson puts his name to. And before the interview, I just tapped into my dealer portal. How much do they want for a 7-year-old Tesla with average miles compared to a 7-year-old BMW 5 Series?
Yeah.
They want £499 for the 5 Series and they want 1,130 odd quid for the Tesla. So that conflicts slightly with Quentin's optimistic long-range vision of reliability, because the warranty company he's associated with actually want more than twice. So they think that there's a bit of a risk with a 7-year-old car. Maybe technology has advanced over those 7 years. I don't see it in the second-hand game. I wouldn't touch one. And also, Quentin, I'm a massive fan of his. I think when he says for a lot of people it's a default position to buy a new car, I think they're speaking from a very lofty, affluential position, because they are expensive.
£44,000, actually, I think, is the average price of an electric car. And I don't fancy one. Yanis, your perception, do you drive an electric vehicle?
I don't. I would aspire to. So my next car, I was having this discussion with my wife. My next car, I would like to be an electric car. So I don't like being a slave to the pumps. Prices are only going to go one way. We obviously saw what happened when everyone mass panic buyed and you couldn't get any petrol.
That was quite funny, actually.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't funny if you seriously needed petrol.
Very frustrating. We live in the same area and I couldn't get any petrol.
But it wasn't funny, especially if you had diesel. That was worse. If you had a petrol, you diesel or petrol?
So I'm petrol, but it's interesting because we are sheep and the government have obviously made it clear they want to herd us towards electric cars. I had a diesel car, so I had a diesel for years because back then the government was saying diesel, diesel, diesel. Then all of a sudden they turn around and say diesel's the devil now, want to go electric. But I would like an electric car. I think for me what was holding me back was the range, and they're getting beyond that point now. The price as well. So I mean they are pricey, and I agree with what you're saying. You know, being in a certain position to buy it. But
what about charging it though? I mean, you know, I don't know. Have you somewhere?
Well, do you know what's funny? When I parked here to come on the show, I parked on one of the streets nearby. And I saw someone hooked up to a lamppost. I was like, what's going on here? I thought maybe they were doing something they shouldn't be, but I didn't know you could charge from a lamppost.
Well, now I need to make a confession now, because
outside
there are 2 electric vehicle charging spaces, but that is relaxed on a Sunday. Currently, there is a Range Rover diesel in one of them, and currently there is a Mercedes in one of them. And I own one of those vehicles.
So you got that.
So you know, because it's free on a Sunday. That's the only place I could park.
Fair enough.
So I would be spitting feathers if I was Quentin wanting to charge somewhere, because you've got
your big old car there.
You've got one of those is my car. But I'm not breaking any rules or anything, because on a Sunday it's all relaxed. But you do need to be affluent, I believe, and. I think affluence is very important.
Well, but what about the range, though? Because this particular Mercedes is a very affluent brand. It's quite aspirational. They have 630 miles, apparently. This is how far this car can go. I don't know how long you're going to have to charge it for. I think something that I didn't manage to get around to asking him was how long he has to wait for that charge, because I haven't got lots of time. Especially if you've got kids.
Sorry,
please,
turned into a car show.
You know.
OK, a Tesla, my brother's got a Tesla, and like Quentin, he's never going to go back to a petrol or diesel. He loves it. You need a supercharger. It takes about 45, 50 minutes, and that's from 0 to 100% battery. If you had something like a Nissan Leaf, which is £25,000, £26,000, you can go from 20 to 80% with a supercharger, I think, within an hour. But if you've got a trickle charger overnight, that's if you can park outside your house. Again, going back to affluence, you know, I think if it's a default setting, you've got a detached house with a charger on the side, rather than trying to get a parking space outside your front door. So Nissan Leaf, trickle charge overnight, 7.5 hours.
See, if you need to go somewhere quickly or urgently, your car isn't fully charged, you're in trouble. It might get better, but how long are we going to wait? And the other side of it, why are we literally getting rid of the fleet of cars that we currently have? I mean, this is a lot of scrap cars, when there are things like biodiesel. Nobody's investigated that, which uses chip fat. So vegetable
used to run
oil.
on it.
You can run diesel engines on biodiesel, and that has, I think, the byproduct, that is water, H2O. That's what comes out of your exhaust. I don't know why they're not looking at that as well. I mean, these are
hydrogen.
so many... Exactly, and even hydrogen-powered cars, to me, that looks like a slightly more, there seems to be more room for that than something that is electric, that requires new facilities, new charging, new this. I mean, it just sounds a little bit...
So I ran on biodiesel for a few years. Used to actually make it at home.
Yeah, you can make it at home.
But it does corrode the plastic inside your car, like tubes.
Well, they could just change... If cars, they could change the tubing in the car. That's a lot cheaper than buying yourself a full electric car.
I just go back to my earlier point as well about the reliability long-term of second-hand cars. All I know is that the warranty company I'm lucky enough to be affiliated with, and Mr. Wilson puts his name to it, they want 1,130-odd quid for a 7-year-old Tesla, whereas they want 499 quid for a 5 Series petrol M Sport. Now, that tells me they think the Tesla's more of a gamble.
Well, it is more of a gamble, I suppose, in a way, because it's a newer thing, so maybe that would be the answer there. But, of course, it is the great British debate. I'm asking if the tide is turning on electric vehicles, and lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Monty says electric vehicles are a danger to the deaf, the elderly and the hard of hearing. You can't hear them at all. They're also expensive and take ages to charge. That's a point that I made. Johnny says, I think Teslas are great and the technology in them is like something from a sci-fi film. Peter says, with the increased sales of electric cars, the Treasury is taking in less fuel duty. If this trend continues, the government will have to find a way to tax electric vehicles to replace the lost income. That's a very good point. Very good point. Tony says, my next car will definitely be electric. They are the future and better for the environment. Interesting stuff. Well, keep your thoughts coming on this and everything we're discussing. But as you know, the way things are going at the moment, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the COVID pandemic is over. But there's a different kind of influenza that's made its way into the human population. A man in southwest England has contracted bird flu. And scientists say the risk of human-to-human transmission is very low, but is there a chance of it spreading? So here to answer our questions about the case is Professor Ian Jones. He's a virologist at the University of Reading. Professor, thank you for joining us. How did this particular case of bird flu end up in the UK?
We get bird flu almost every winter, or we certainly have done for about the last 5 years. Last year was particularly bad, in fact, although it was pushed off the headlines by the COVID situation. And this year it looks like being even worse. So plenty of bird flu comes here. It comes in the migrating birds which are flying from the north to the warmer south. You tend to get cases when they drop down to take a rest or to feed on their journey, and they transfer the virus to local flocks, to local wild birds and to local farmed poultry. And in the case of farmed poultry, if there's a large number of birds which become infected, then there is the very small chance that that virus will pass to the people who are associated with those birds. And that's what's happened in this case.
Now, as I listen about this, because is this strain the H5N1 strain? Because we've heard about it before. Is that what it is when it's in humans? Is that if it is transmitted, or is it the same thing? Is that a new terminology?
Yeah, no, it is the same thing. It is the same thing. This strain was notorious perhaps about 15 years ago. You might remember every swan that fell out of the sky was tested for H5N1, and there was a great deal of concern that the virus might make the jump from birds to human and to spread and cause a new influenza pandemic. That has never happened, and a great deal of research has been done into the strain since that time, showing that there are a number of barriers which prevent it happening easily. It's not to say it could never happen, but it does seem much less likely now than it did 10 to 15 years ago, when there was a great deal of concern about this, what was then a new virus spreading in the avian populations of the world.
Didn't they have an outbreak in China, though, of this particular thing, and it was quite deadly? And as I read, there was about 53% mortality rate.
Yes, the mortality rate is high. So the total number of people who have contracted the virus is about 850, and of those, more than 400 have died. So it's around 50%. The good news, if you like, is that when the outbreaks occur, they do tend to be very small. They do not pass person to person, so it's the immediate contacts of the birds who become infected. And the overall numbers haven't really gone up. It's a constant problem, particularly in areas where there is poultry being farmed with a very low level of biosecurity. But the total number of cases and the incidence really hasn't changed that much over the years.
I wanted to ask you, is there, and this is worst case and most frightening scenario, but is there any risk that something like bird flu could mix with something like, say, COVID-19 and become more transmissible? And obviously with the higher mortality rate, this would be quite a serious scenario. But with so much of the coronavirus knocking around at the moment, is that an opportunity? Is that anything that could actually happen?
No, that's a very clear no. Those viruses are, the way they're built, the way they work is very different. And even if they were transiently in the same person, there would be no possibility whatsoever of them recombining to form anything more deadly.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. That's good to know, because and for the bird population, then, if we look at that population, obviously this is quite devastating for many of the farmers and those who look after birds. Is there any other thing apart from culling them? Is there any other help?
Well, you cull them after they've been infected, so the idea would be for them not to get infected, and so that's biosecurity. Bring the birds inside, try to maintain perimeter security so that when wild birds are around, they don't come into contact with the farmed flocks. Water sources are particularly important. The virus is excreted by the birds into water, and that's one of the ways in which it gets across into large poultry flocks. So biosecurity is the initial response. It is possible to vaccinate against H5N1, but you've got to remember that some of these birdhouses have several thousand, up to 10,000 maybe, birds in at any one time. So it's not an easy job to consider vaccinating them all. And it would sort of accept the fact that bird flu was likely to get in, and maybe the focus should be to try to stop it getting in the first place.
Interesting stuff. And very briefly, do we have a human vaccine for the H5N1 virus?
Yes, as I mentioned, that's when the original concern occurred, there was a lot of research into vaccinating against H5 in case it became a human pandemic virus. It hasn't made that jump, but certainly the vaccines were made and they were tested. And if they had to be rolled out, they could be rolled out relatively quickly.
That's good to know. Ian, thank you so much for joining us. That's Professor Ian Jones, who's a virologist at the University of Reading. Now, though, it's time for Supplement Sunday, our weekly feature where we look at some of the day's headlines. Now, this first one is in the Liverpool Echo. A dad of 9 who had read anti-vax social media posts ended up being desperate to get jabbed before he died of COVID. Messages from Stephen Doyle to his partner sent whilst he was in hospital on Christmas Day show that having the virus changed his mind. So I'm still with my panel, broadcaster Danny Kelly and actor Yanis Morgan. Danny, this is a heartbreaking story, isn't it?
It's awful. From my home city of Liverpool, a dad of 9 who has fallen victim
9?
45 years old, who's fallen victim to online conspiracy theories. It's becoming so tribal nowadays. We are separated as a society. You have a minority of people who think it's outrageous to be asked whether they have a vaccine or asked to whether to wear a mask or not. And you have, I'd say, the majority of the public who just think it's the right civil thing to do. This guy's fallen victim, unfortunately, to these loonies online. My wife's uncle's friend in New York is 72, and he's been rushed into intensive care in New York City because he too has fell victim to this tribal conspiracy theory. And it's just terrible. It's awful. And we just hear so much of it, whether it's a reluctance to wear a mask or whether it's part of some sort of bigger worldwide new order reset or something. It's frightening.
But this goes on a bigger problem, I think, that we face that we never had to encounter when we were all younger. It's fake news, because there are a lot of stories out there and they just spread like wildfire, and people do believe them because there are so many.
But a lot
of people, algorithms.
But a lot of people don't think they are. I mean, OK, so you've got the story of Djokovic, and his wife was actually, she actually, a couple of years ago, retweeted the whole thing about the 5G with regard to COVID-19 and all that. So that's, people are still believing a lot of this. Let's have a look at the next story. This one is The Express, and it's warning that next week's weather could get icy. It says that the Met Office predicts temperatures could stoop to -2 and even -6 in parts of Scotland, and that's because of an Icelandic band of low pressure. So, Yanis, what's the coldest winter that you can remember?
Well, a few years ago, I remember we had a winter where it was -4, because I was getting in my car driving to work. It was -4 pretty much every night from October all the way through to March. The thing is, in the UK, we complain about -4. I spent some time in Lapland, -10, -15, -18. They don't think it, they don't even blink to that. We get a little bit of frost -2 and or a little bit of snow and it's the end of the UK.
Well, I've got one more for you. This is the Daily Star story. Now, that's out of this world. It says that scientists could get proof of life on Mars within just 20 years. Astrophysicist Sarah Cruddas reckons that we could get evidence of microbial life on the red planet very soon. But she says that aliens are more likely to discover us before we discover them. So, Danny and Yanis, do you believe in aliens?
Yeah. Yes, I do. I think it's so arrogant for people to say that there's no such thing. How do they know? We live in a system where there are thousands of stars and planets. So, yes, I believe there's more evidence to suggest that there is alien life than to arrogantly say, no, there's not.
There's more stars... there's more more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on the planet.
Wow.
So if you think about that, and that's just suns, and think about the planets around them, how can we say there's not life out there? We just haven't discovered it.
Well, apparently, so we are one universe, so you've got a universe here and you've got all our stars, but we're like a bubble, and there's another one, another one, another one. I mean, there's loads of them. It's so annoying. I mean, if you get out of this one, which doesn't seem like we can get out of it, nobody knows on the outside. Elon Musk has tried it, but unfortunately, his thing doesn't even go to the edge of space, or the edge of space, you didn't get very
Interesting
far.
with this new telescope. So the one that's taking over from Hubble, so what it's going to find.
Well, it will be interesting, but...
I think aliens appear on this station every now and again in some form.
Do you think?
You're trying to tell us something.
Maybe they're here, but they're
not on this show today.
Maybe they're here, but they're just in a form that you or I don't actually understand.
Maybe. They could be already here. Yeah, you never know.
Well, listen, I've got to say that on today's show we've been asking, should we end lateral flow testing? According to our Twitter poll, 80% of you said yes, we should. You see, 80%.
Wow.
They're with me.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's just getting a bit, a bit much, isn't it?
You win every week.
No, I don't actually. I've lost a few times, but I do think that it is something that we should start looking into and think, maybe we need to wean ourselves off this.
In time, I totally agree. I don't think right now.
Maybe we start now, though.
I don't know. I think we have to phase it out.
Well, okay. Interesting stuff.
Got to be phased out.
Well, you guys are with me. 80% of you say yes, and 20% of you say no. I've got to say thank you so much to my fabulous panel. broadcaster Danny Kelly.
you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Are you back next week?
Next Sunday.
Next Sunday. Well,
Inshallah, God willing.
That's very good. And you, Yanis, thank you very much for you. When are you coming back?
A couple of Sundays' time.
That's lovely. That'll be fabulous. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me, Yanis and Danny. And also, thank you so much to you at home. It's been a pleasure as ever. I'll be back next Friday at 4, so join me then. But in the meantime, I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy your Sunday.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So, looking ahead then to this evening's weather, and the UK looking rather drier with showers easing and clear spells, although rain arrives in the southwest. Let's take a look at the detail then. The southwest of England already cloudy with hill fog edging eastwards. Outbreaks of rain already across much of Devon and Cornwall. In contrast, drier and clearer across the southeast. Winds will be easing, which will allow temperatures to fall away. It's going to